I still remember the moment that siren faded into the night. Cold steel cuffs dug into my wrists, the gravel beneath me cutting into my knees, flashing red and blue. Karen's voice echoing, smug somewhere behind me. He threatened me. He's dangerous. But I hadn't done a damn thing. How did I get here? Well, it started with a no. That one word triggered a war I never saw coming. Let's rewind. Not to the day I got arrested. Not yet. Let me take you back to the moment I first met Karen. I had just moved into the house my mom left me. She'd passed 6 months earlier, and the grief was still heavy. She loved the countryside. The trees, the peace, the wildflowers. That house was her dream. Now it was mine. I moved in hoping to heal, rebuild, and find some quiet. On my 3rd day, a woman in khakis and pearls knocked on my door. Clipboard, aviators. The air of someone who's used to people obeying her. "You must be Eli," she said, smiling. "Welcome to the community. Karen, president of the HOA. I blinked. Thanks. But I glanced around. "There's no HOA here," she laughed. "Technically no, but we function as one. What? This neighborhood runs best when we all follow some standards. You'll find it easier if you join." I smiled politely. "I'm not interested." That was the moment everything shifted. Her lips pressed into a tight line. "It's in everyone's best interest that you do," I said. "I didn't move out here to answer to a clipboard." She said, "You'll regret that." I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't. At first, it was small things. Notices in my mailbox claiming fines. A letter saying my trash bins were violating visual code compliance. A note on my windshield saying my vehicle lacked neighborhood harmony. I tossed them, laughed, thought it'd blow over. Then the sabotage started. Garbage can disappeared. Lawn service I hired canceled last minute. My Wi-Fi cut off from the pole. The flowers my mom planted. Dead, burned out by fertilizer that scorched the soil. Still, I didn't budge. Then came the knock. Eli. A voice I didn't recognize. Teenager, maybe 16, nervous, hair tied back, bruise under her eye. "I'm Karen's niece. You don't know me, but I think she's going to hurt you. Not just in court, like really hurt you." I let her in, gave her tea. She showed me her phone, pictures, notes, recordings. Karen had done this before, harassed people into submission. Fake legal letters, altered property lines, paid off minor officials. The girl said she destroyed a guy 2 blocks over, took his backyard. He moved out, vanished. She says, "You're next." That night I didn't sleep. I started digging deep. Through county maps, land records, legal filings, and what I found chilled me. My property legally wasn't part of her HOA at all. Not even close. But Karen had a copy of an updated map that included it. A fake. A lie. But she used it like a sword. I kept digging. Turns out Karen wasn't just a neighborhood busybody. She was dangerous. She'd created her own version of the HOA. Unregistered, unmonitored, but enforced like law. People followed out of fear. She was the queen of a fake kingdom, so I decided not to play by her rules. The next time she came knocking, she brought a police officer. I had just stepped out to trim the hedges. She marched up my driveway like she owned it. "You're in violation of structure height codes," she snapped. The officer looked embarrassed. "Sir, we've had a complaint. We need to inspect." "For what? I have no HOA, no code violation." "This is harassment." Karen smirked. "You'll find the HOA charter includes your property line now." I said nothing. I opened my phone and showed the officer the real map. The legal one. I'd printed it and had it notarized. He paused. "This doesn't match what we were given, because what you were given is fake." He didn't say anything more. "Just left." Karen glared at me. "You just made this worse." That night, someone threw a rock through my back window. A week later, mailbox was ripped out of the ground. I installed cameras, motion lights. I stopped sleeping properly. Every bump outside had me reaching for a flashlight. Then came the worst night of my life. It was 2 a.m. I heard a crash. His front door kicked in. Flashlights yelling. I didn't even have time to react. A dozen men in tactical gear. Guns, shields, hands in the air. I hit the floor. One of them cuffed me. Another grabbed my laptop. My phone. They tore the place apart. I kept asking, "What's happening? What's going on?" No answers, just barking voices. Then I saw her, Karen, standing outside, smiling. Filming I spent 2 days in holding. No one could tell me why. No charges. Just vague mentions of a suspicious activity report submitted anonymously. When they released me, the officer said quietly, "We're sorry. It looks like it was a false tip. You've got some powerful enemies." I went home to a ransacked house. Broken dishes, flipped mattress, papers everywhere. I sat in the ruins and broke down. Not out of fear, out of rage. This wasn't just HOA harassment. This was psychological warfare, and that's when I made the decision. I'd take her down. Not by playing dirty, but by exposing her. I launched a website, a blog. I uploaded everything. The maps, the fake letters, the niece's recordings. I told my story and asked others to share theirs. Within a week, I had 30 emails, then 100, all from victims. People who had been harassed, fined, intimidated, or forced to sell. Karen tried to silence me. She sent a cease and desist through a fake law firm, but I knew now. Everything about her was smoke and mirrors. Then came the twist I never expected. A city official contacted me anonymously, said they'd been pressured by Karen's contacts to ignore building permits and rezoning requests, said she'd threatened to expose personal info if they didn't comply, gave me files, documents, emails. I added it all to the website. It went viral. Karen panicked. She called the cops again, claimed I was stalking her, that I was a threat to the community. But by now, the tide had turned. A journalist picked up the story. My blog exploded. HOA members started resigning. Then the big break. An investigator from the state attorney's office knocked on my door. Real badge. Real credentials. "We've been watching this HOA for a while," he said. "We just didn't have a face. Now we do." I handed him everything I had. 2 weeks later, Karen was the one in handcuffs. Fraud, forgery, harassment, misuse of public resources. She screamed the whole time, "This is a mistake. He's lying. I run this community." Not anymore. And the best part? The footage of her being arrested, sobbing, cursing, begging, was uploaded to the same blog she tried to shut down. It was poetic. But I'll be honest with you, none of this brought back my peace. The house still feels haunted by what she did. Some nights I still wake up at 2 a.m. hearing phantom boots at the door. But you know what I did after? I invited every person she ever harassed to my property. We held a backyard BBQ, no HOA, no rules, just people, free people. Because saying no shouldn't cost you your sanity. And I hope, wherever Karen is now, she knows all of this. Because she didn't understand the power of one person standing their ground. The morning after Karen was taken away in cuffs, the air felt different. Lighter, but not peaceful. Like the aftermath of a storm that had only just begun to reveal the damage. I stood on my porch, sipping black coffee from the mug my mother had given me, staring at the gravel drive where she used to march up like she owned it. Now it was empty. Quiet. Too quiet. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen's face was plastered across local news stations and blog headlines. HOA president arrested in shocking fraud sting. Neighbors peeked from behind their blinds. Some even walked by casually, pretending to walk their dogs just to get a look at the house where she ruled. Her kingdom was crumbling, but what no one knew yet was that her reach had been deeper than anyone. Imagined it started with an envelope. Hand-delivered, no return address. Inside, photocopies of legal documents. Half of them were bogus, filed under dummy LLCs connected to property development firms I'd never heard of. But one of them caught my eye, a deed transfer on a nearby lot, dated 3 months prior, with a signature that looked eerily familiar. The former owner's only. He had died 2 years ago. I knew his name, Mr. Ray Walker, elderly veteran. Lived 2 blocks down before Karen assisted him into a care facility. No kids, no family. His house was vacant, then suddenly sold. That was one of the homes she used to scare me with. We handled non-compliance swiftly, she had said once, gesturing vaguely toward it. Now I understood how she hadn't just been making life miserable. She'd been forging ownership, creating shell companies, laundering property into her name, or the names of people tied to her HOA cronies. This was bigger than fake fines and harassment. This was organized theft. Drove straight to the state attorney's office and asked for the same investigator. He remembered me immediately. "Eli," he said, "we were just going through what you sent us last time." I placed the envelope on his desk. Karen didn't just target me. She's been stealing homes. Stared at the documents for a while. Then we need to reopen the entire file. That's when the real machine kicked in. I wasn't just a target now. I was a witness. Investigators started interviewing other neighbors, former HOA members, even code enforcement employees. Turns out Karen's influence extended far past our little neighborhood. There were 3 counties involved, multiple HOA communities. All of them shared one thing: silence and fear. Until now, one woman, a retired teacher named Ms. Belinda, came forward and told us how she was fined for keeping unauthorized flora in her yard. It was a rose bush, a memorial for her son who died overseas. When she refused to remove it, Karen had her cited for disruptive landscaping. Belinda ended up selling her home. She cried when she told me that. Another man, Jasper, had installed a solar panel system, legal, efficient, clean. But Karen didn't like how it looked. She had a forged zoning complaint filed. He was forced to remove it at his own expense, lost nearly 20 grand. Everyone had a story, and for every one person brave enough to speak, there were 5 more who stayed silent, afraid she might still retaliate. What most people didn't know was that Karen wasn't acting alone. That was the mistake the media kept making. HOA tyrant arrested. She wasn't just a tyrant, she was a front. Behind her was a web of connections. An attorney named Victor Briggs, who had helped file at least 17 fraudulent land claims. A county assessor who always seemed to update landlines in her favor. A real estate agent who sold properties she didn't legally own, yet somehow always had paperwork in order. I spent nights just mapping them out. The more I found, the more disturbing it got. But the worst discovery didn't come from a document. It came from a child. Karen's niece, same girl who had warned me in the beginning, showed up again. This time older, less afraid. She knocked on my door wearing a backpack and holding a USB drive. "She always made me help her shred things," she said, her voice flat. After she got arrested, I went into her office. She had a safe behind a fake drawer. I plugged the USB in. Hundreds of scanned files, signed papers, voice memos, all video clips, and one folder titled simply, Liabilities. Inside were photos, surveillance style, people, houses, notes about their weaknesses, bank statements, health records, stuff no regular HOA should have ever had. One note stopped my breath. It was about me. Mother died 6 months ago, emotionally vulnerable, lacks social connections, new, uninformed, target viable. I felt sick. This wasn't neighborhood management. This was psychological warfare disguised as community oversight. We turned the USB over to the state. Within days, Karen's charges tripled. Wire fraud, elder abuse, racketeering, and still. The layers peeled back. Investigators discovered over $400,000 funneled, ate through HOA maintenance fees into private accounts. Accounts tied to luxury items, a yacht in Florida, a rental property in Arizona. Even payments for plastic surgery procedures under someone else's name, but justice wasn't clean. Karen's attorney, Victor Briggs, tried to strike a plea deal. Claimed Karen was mentally unstable, that she didn't understand what she was doing, that others manipulated her. Classic deflection, but they didn't know about the audio file. One recording from the USB was Karen. In her own voice, laughing. "They'll never prove it," she said. "People see a middle-aged white woman in pearls, and they assume I'm just fussy, not dangerous. That's the trick. The court heard it, and the jury didn't hesitate. But sentencing didn't bring closure. In the weeks that followed, some neighbors still treated me like a problem, like I had stirred the pot. One man, Paul, who had been part of the HOA board, glared at me every time I passed by. His silence wasn't neutrality, it was guilt. He had enforced those fake rules for years. I didn't care. I hadn't started this war. But I had finished it. And yet, kept thinking about all the people who hadn't made it out. Mr. Ray Walker, whose home was stolen after his death. Belinda, who lost her rosebush. The countless others who sold cheap, too tired to fight. They deserved to be seen, to be heard. So I printed every testimony, every scanned document, and opened a small exhibit in the old community center Karen used to run, called it The Unheard. And people came, neighbors, reporters, lawyers, even the state attorney. But no Karen. She was sitting in federal custody, awaiting sentencing. The woman who once ruled the neighborhood with a plastic clipboard and a killer smile was now reduced to a number. In the end, she did get what she deserved. But it wasn't revenge that made the story matter. It was truth. It was the power of one word that started it all. A word I had to fight for again and again until someone listened. No, I won't sign. No, I won't pay. No, I won't be intimidated. And for anyone watching this, I hope you remember that sometimes the smallest stand, the quietest refusal, can expose the loudest lie, especially when someone like Karen builds her kingdom on silence. The courtroom was dead silent when the final verdict was read. Karen didn't blink. Not when the words guilty on all counts echoed through the air. Not when the crowd behind me let out a collective sigh of justice. Not even when the judge asked if she had anything to say. She didn't. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes hollow. The same woman who had once paraded through the neighborhood in pastel suits and manicured control now sat in a gray jumpsuit. Stripped of all pretense, but that wasn't the end, because the damage she left behind, it didn't go away with her. Walked outside the courthouse and was met with flashing cameras and reporters. I ignored them. I didn't come here for attention. I came to close a chapter that had already written itself in blood, ash, and broken trust. But as I crossed the parking lot, someone called my name, Eli. A woman, late 30s, brown curls tucked behind her ears, wearing a deep green jacket, jogged up to me, breathless. I'm Naomi. I used to live on Canyon Ridge. Her eyes were glassy. Karen. She forced me out 4 years ago. I just wanted to say, thank you. I nodded, unsure what to say. People had started doing this more and more, approaching me like I was some local hero. I didn't feel like one.
Out!
I felt like a man who had lost his peace and clawed back his sanity. By pure force of will. But I looked her in the eyes and said, you deserved better. She exhaled like no one had ever told her that before. And then she said something I'll never forget. She used my disabled son to find me. Claimed his therapy equipment violated visual codes. I went cold. Is your son okay now? She nodded slowly. He doesn't remember much. He was 5. We moved to states over, but I kept every letter, every threat, every photo. If you ever need it, it's yours. I took her number because somewhere deep inside me, I knew we hadn't reached the bottom of Karen's rot. Not yet. The days that followed were strange, quiet, but not peaceful. My house felt different, not haunted, but hollow. Like the noise had been replaced by echoes. I sat on the porch a lot. Rewatched old videos of my mom's voice, fixed small things around the property. I thought healing would be instant, but it wasn't then. I got a phone call. Blocked number. I answered anyway. A deep voice, cautious. Is this Eli? Yes. Pause. You don't know me, but I knew your mother. I was her attorney. My pulse jumped. He continued. There's something you need to see. Something I promised I'd give you. But only when the threats were gone. 10 hours later, I met him in a small office 2 towns over. Gray hair, sharp eyes. He slid a manila folder across the table. She kept this hidden. Told me not to tell you unless she was gone and the HOA was dealt with. Inside were photos, documents, journal pages, and a named Karen years ago. Long before my mother got sick, she had clashed with Karen back when the HOA was still forming. Karen had tried to recruit her, offer her a seat on the board, knowing my mother was educated, respected, and deeply involved in local causes. She said no, and Karen had punished. Her anonymous letters, inspections, even a bogus noise complaint. But my mom never told me. She kept it hidden, maybe to protect me. Maybe because she thought she could outlast it. She didn't single quotes. There was even a letter in her handwriting. If anything ever happens to me, Eli, know this. I said no, and she didn't. Forgive me for it. Don't let her win. My vision blurred. All this time, I thought I was standing up too. Karen, because she came after me. But it started long before that. She'd been waging a quiet war against my family. My mother tried to resist. She just didn't. Live long enough to finish the fight. I did. Back home. I sat in the garden where she used to sit, her old chair still creaking like it remembered her. I looked around at the trees she planted, the bird bath she loved. The fence she had helped paint, Karen had tried to claim all of it. Nearly succeeded, but I was still here, and I wasn't done. That week, I reopened the exhibit at the community center. Added new panels. One for my mom. One for Naomi's son. One for each story that had been buried. But the real twist came when I got a letter. Real envelope. Official seal. It was from the state. They were launching a task force. A new oversight. Division. And they wanted me on the advisory board. Someone who'd lived through HOA abuse and survived it. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't an official. But they said that's what made me perfect. I hesitated. Then I remembered Karen's voice, mocking me. You'll regret that. No, she would. I accepted. A month later, I sat in a state building next to lawmakers and attorneys and zoning officials, helping draft legislation that would forever change how apps is operated in the state. No more fake fines. No more forged maps. No more unregistered neighborhood authorities. I couldn't undo the past, but I could help write the future, and yet, just when I thought it was over, another surprise arrived. A man showed up at my property. Mid-40s, tall, quiet. He didn't walk up right away. Just stood by the tree line looking. I stepped off the porch. Can I help you? He nodded slowly. You don't know me? My name's Marcus. I'm Karen's son. Everything inside me stiffened. He raised his hands. I'm not here to defend. Her, I didn't say anything, just waited. He looked down, then back up. She lied to me my whole life. Told me my dad abandoned us. Told me people like you were out to destroy the community. I believed her. Until she came for me too. What do you mean? She tried to take my father's land? Said it was part of her HOA. But it was his before she even got married. He left it to me in his will. When I challenged her, she tried to ruin me. My mouth went dry. He pulled out a file. This is everything I have. Emails, logs, even her private recordings. I never thought it would matter until I saw your name in the news. Why now? I asked. He looked at my house, at the land. Because she tried to destroy you, and my father. And I can't let her legacy be the last word. He handed me the file. I took it. Not knowing what it might contain, but already knowing it would be the final layer in a story I had thought was finished. That night I opened it all. She had recorded herself for years, venting, planning, boasting. There were names of people she paid off. Notes about property grabs across other counties. Even ideas for how to manipulate homeowner anxiety for profit. Karen wasn't just a bad neighbor. She was a strategist, manipulator, a predator in pearls. And now, fully exposed. I forwarded everything to the Attorney General. Then I walked out. To the garden, the one my mom planted. The one I nearly lost. And I sat, and I breathed. For the first time in years, there was no buzzing in my chest, no tension in my shoulders. Just wind, trees, and silence, not fear silence, peace-silence. The kind that comes after a storm that tried to take everything from you, but failed. The kind you earn, and I'd earned it every painful second. Sometimes, peace is a lie you tell yourself until the ground stops shaking. I thought I had found closure. I thought I had buried the nightmare that was Karen, her schemes, her fraud, her cruel grin that used to shadow my doorstep like a curse. But trauma doesn't ask permission to linger, just shows up. Even after Karen was sentenced. Even after her son handed me the final damning files. Even after the state invited me to help build reforms. She still lived in my walls. In my dreams, in my memories, I could hear her voice when the wind blew through the kitchen window. Could see her standing in the distance if I stared too long at the trees. Could feel her rage in the cold creak of the floorboards. And then came the letter. It was handwritten, shaky script, no return address. It arrived in a plain white envelope, no stamp. Someone had delivered it in person. I opened it, heart already. Racing, you never knew the whole story. You still don't. But you need to. I read it again. The only person I knew who signed with that initial was Marcus, Karen's son. But the handwriting was older, slanted. And then I noticed something in the corner of the envelope. A faint water stain, smeared over what looked like ink from another address. Someone had tried to erase it, and that meant someone didn't want. It traced. I spent the next hour staring at that single sheet of paper. My hands shook, not from fear but from exhaustion. Just when I thought this chapter was closed, someone wanted to open a new one. And I didn't know if I could take it, but then I remembered my mom's note in the attorney's folder, "Don't let her win." So I dug in. The local courthouse had decades of land ownership records, most of them digitized. I spent hours filtering through the database. Property lines, tax ledgers, deed transfers. But none of them mentioned anything about Karen before. She arrived on our road. She seemed to appear out of nowhere in 1996, bought a modest house, joined the neighborhood watch, and then slowly rose through the ranks until she unofficially founded the HOA. That wasn't unheard of. But something didn't sit right, so I went analog. I drove to a county 2 hours north, the one listed as her original birthplace on court records. I visited the library archives and dug up Old Town newspapers, hoping to find a clue. Anything that pointed to who Karen used to be before she became her. That's when I found the obituary, not hers. Her sister's name, Mary Ann Lively. Died, 1992. Survived by husband, daughter, and a sister. Catherine Lively Karen, but she wasn't always Karen. She used to be Catherine. The article didn't say much, but it mentioned the daughter, Madeline Lively, 12 years old at the time. No other details, no surviving records. That name haunted me. Madeline, it wasn't just familiar, it was personal. In the pile of HOA complaint letters Karen had sent over the years, one of them, a typed violation about unauthorized garden, sculptures had been signed by a board member named M. Lively. I'd missed it. Buried in the fine print, I went home. Dug up that exact notice, and there it was again. M. Lively, board member, dated 4 years ago. Karen's niece. This wasn't her niece. She was her daughter. Madeline. All the pieces fell into place. The bruised teenager who came to warn me, who said she hurt you like she hurt the others. That wasn't just a frightened girl. That was someone raised in the belly of the beast. Someone who knew Karen from the inside. And suddenly, her face came back to me in a new light. The flinches when I raised my voice, the way she couldn't make eye contact for long, the fact that she never gave me a last name. I had to find her. But she was gone. The phone number she gave me, it's disconnected. The apartment she'd listed when she applied for a job 2 years ago in town, vacant. It was like she'd disappeared, but the letter, the one she left me, was proof she was still watching. Still. Trying to make something right, and maybe. Still afraid, I took everything I'd found and gave it to Marcus. He read it in silence. When he finished, he leaned back and covered his face. "I had a sister," he whispered. "She always said she hated our mother, but I never knew why. She left when she turned 18. I never heard from her again." Now he understood Karen had forced her daughter to become part of the lie, used her as a puppet in the HOA, maybe even blamed her when things went wrong. And when Madeline couldn't take it anymore, she ran. But she didn't run far. She stayed. Close enough to make sure Karen didn't get away with it. To leave bread, CRUMBS. And now those breadcrumbs led to the final twist. In the bottom of the envelope was one more slip of paper. Torn, scrawled in pencil. The house on Pine Hollow? Basement? Hidden panel behind the shelves? If she kept anything, it's there. The house on Pine Hollow was one of Karen's first acquisitions. A foreclosure. She forced on an elderly couple 2 decades ago. The county had seized it after her conviction, and it sat abandoned behind yellow tape. Marcus and I didn't wait for permission. We broke the lock. Stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with mold and dust. It's the kind of place that time forgets. We went to the basement. Flashlights barely cut through the darkness. Shelves lined the far wall, old paint cans, rusted tools, cracked bins. We pushed everything aside, and then I found it, a small indent. What that didn't quite match. I pressed it. Click, the panel slid open. Inside, metal box, heavy locked. Marcus pried it open with a crowbar. What we found changed everything. Birth, certificates, bank account info, fake ones, at least for different. Identities tied to Karen, all with separate bank accounts. International wire transfers, travel documents, and beneath it all, a journal. Her handwriting slanted. Sharp, she wrote everything. Every scam, every lie. Even her fears that her daughter would betray her. That Marcus would grow a conscience. That one day someone would stand up and say no. And then a final entry. I should have broken him when I had the chance. The boy with the dead mother. Too stubborn. Too loud. He's the kind that ruins everything. My name wasn't written, but it didn't need to be. I closed the journal. At Marcus, we give it all to the feds, he said, and we did. The additional evidence opened an entirely new case. Fraud at the federal level. International laundering. Asset seizures. Everything Karen built. Burned down to ash, the state reclaimed. Every property stolen under her HOA. Every fine she issued was invalidated. Every document forged was exposed. And in the middle of it all, Madeline, wherever she was, had become the final nail in her mother's coffin. I never heard from her again. But every time the wind rustles the trees in my backyard, I wonder if she's still out there watching free, maybe building a life, where her mother's name doesn't chase her anymore. I hope so. As for me, the house is quiet now, not haunted, not hollow, just quiet. The bird bath my mom loved, I cleaned it, the fence she painted. The porch where Karen once stood, trying to force her will into my home? Now it's mine again, fully. Sometimes people stop by. Old neighbors, survivors, they bring baked goods or wine, or just stories. We sit and talk, we laugh, remember, and then they leave, and I sit alone. But I don't feel alone anymore, because I know I took back something bigger than a house. I took back truth. I took back legacy. I took back my voice. And no one clipboard or courtroom will ever steal that again. Not in this neighborhood. Not in this lifetime.